My heart pounded in my chest. It had been years since I last saw him. Would he remember me? Or had time erased everything we once shared? Mogie? Silence. Just the sound of the wind brushing through the trees. Then a rustling in the distance, a shadow moving. And suddenly, there he was. It's me. He stood there staring, his deep brown eyes, the same ones I had looked into when he was just a baby, now filled with something I couldn't read. Was it caution, curiosity, or was it something more? Do you remember me? He sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring, a moment of hesitation, a step forward. My breath caught in my throat. If he remembered me, this could be the most beautiful moment of my life. But if he didn't? To understand how we got here, we have to go back to the beginning, to the day I became a mother to a gorilla. I never imagined my life would lead me here. I wasn't a mother in the traditional sense, but fate had other plans. The day I met Mogie, everything changed. He was so small, so fragile, barely clinging to life. His mother was gone, and without help, he wouldn't survive. I remember the first time I held him, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, his breathing weak but steady. In that moment, I knew I couldn't walk away. Caring for a baby gorilla wasn't easy. He needed constant attention, warmth, and love. Just like any human child, I fed him, rocked him to sleep, and even stayed up through the night when he was sick. He clung to me like I was his mother, and in every way that mattered, I was. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. He grew stronger, his personality blossoming. He was playful, mischievous, always curious about the world around him. I still remember the first time he laughed, a deep, joyful sound that made my heart swell. It was in those moments that I forgot he was different. He wasn't just an animal, he was my son. But deep down, I always knew this wasn't forever. One day, I'd have to let him go. Mogie was growing fast. Each day he became stronger, more independent. He wasn't the tiny, fragile baby I had once cradled in my arms. He was learning, exploring, testing his limits. And as much as I wanted to hold on, I knew I had to prepare him for the life he was meant to live. He loved climbing. At first he was hesitant, gripping my arm for support. But soon, he was scaling trees with ease, his instincts taking over. I watched with a mix of pride and sadness. He belonged in the wild, yet he still ran back to me, seeking comfort, reassurance. I was his safety, his home. But raising a gorilla wasn't all laughter and play. There were challenges. When he got frustrated, he would throw things, beat his chest, even push me away. It was his way of testing boundaries, just like any child. I had to be patient, to teach him. Every day I reminded myself, this wasn't about keeping him. It was about preparing him for the world outside my arms. And yet, the bond between us only grew deeper. He followed me everywhere, mimicking my movements, even trying to eat like me. He would grab my face with his tiny hands, staring into my eyes as if he was trying to understand me. And in those moments, I knew he did. He wasn't just learning from me. I was learning from him too, about trust, about love, about what it truly meant to be family. I knew this day would come, but no amount of time could have prepared me for it. Mogie wasn't a baby anymore. He was strong, confident, ready, and the world outside was calling him home. The decision wasn't mine alone. Experts told me it was time. He needed to be with his own kind, to live the life he was meant for. My heart fought against it, but deep down, I knew they were right. Keeping him with me would be selfish. I had to let him go. The final day was the hardest. He didn't understand what was happening. He clung to me, just like he had when he was little, his wide eyes searching mine for answers. How could I explain to him that this was goodbye? I walked him to the edge of the sanctuary, my legs heavy, my chest tight. The handlers were waiting. He hesitated, looking back at me, confused. I forced a smile, even as my vision blurred with tears. "Go on, Mogie," I whispered. "It's okay." For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he turned. Step by step, he walked away. And just like that, he was gone. I stood there long after he disappeared into the trees, listening, hoping he would come running back. But he didn't. Because this was how it was meant to be. I told myself I'd done the right thing, that he was where he belonged. But my arms felt empty, and my heart ached in a way I had never known before. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and then years. Life moved on, but a part of me never did. I found myself looking at old pictures, watching videos of Mogie as a baby, remembering the way he used to cling to me, the way he used to laugh. I wondered if he was safe, if he was happy, if he ever thought of me. At night, I would dream about him. Sometimes he was still small, curled up in my arms. Other times, he was full-grown, standing just out of reach, watching me with those deep brown eyes. I would wake up with my heart pounding, longing for something I couldn't have back. Then, one day, I got the call. A wildlife team had spotted a silverback in a protected reserve, strong, dominant, leading his own group. But there was something about him. Unlike the others, he wasn't aggressive toward humans. He watched them with a kind of curiosity, almost like recognition. I knew it had to be him. I had to see for myself. My heart raced as I packed my bags, booked my flight, and made my way back to the place where I had last seen him. It had been so long. Would he even remember me? Or was I just a distant shadow from a past he had left behind? As the jungle closed in around me, my hands trembled. Every step brought me closer to the moment I had both dreamed of and feared. What if he didn't recognize me? What if I was just another stranger in his world now? But there was no turning back. I had to find out. I had to see him one last time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and leaves. My heart pounded with every step as I followed the guide deeper into the jungle. I could hear the distant calls of birds, the rustling of unseen creatures. And then, the guide stopped. "He's here," he whispered. I held my breath. Just beyond the trees, a massive figure stood. Broad shoulders, powerful arms, a towering presence. He was no longer the small, helpless baby I once cradled. He was a leader now, a king of the jungle. Mogie. He turned slowly, his deep brown eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, there was nothing, just silence, just stillness. Did he know? Did he remember? Or was I just another human, another face in a world he had long left behind? I took a step forward, then another. My hands trembled, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's me." He sniffed the air, his muscles tensed. I could see the hesitation, the flicker of something in his eyes. Confusion? Recognition? My heart was racing. And then, he moved. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped toward me. The jungle felt smaller, quieter. Nothing else existed in that moment. He reached out, his massive hand hovering just inches from me. My breath caught in my throat. And then, he touched me. A deep, familiar grunt rumbled from his chest. His eyes softened. He knew. Tears blurred my vision as I let out a shaky laugh. "You remember?" And just like that, the years melted away. The jungle may have been his home now, but in that moment I knew. Our bond had never been broken. He was still my Mogie. I don't know how long we stood there. Time didn't matter. In that moment, it was just us, two souls who had once been inseparable, now reunited in a way I never thought possible. Mogie studied me with those same curious eyes, as if trying to piece together the years we had lost. And then, in the most unexpected way, he did something that shattered me completely. He leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against mine, just like he used to when he was little. It was his way of saying, "I know you. I never forgot." Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't just from sadness. They were from gratitude, from love, from the realization that even though we had been apart, what we shared had never truly faded. I wanted to stay forever, but I knew I couldn't. This was his world now, and he had a family of his own. As I stepped back, he didn't try to follow. He just watched me, his expression calm, understanding. He knew I had to go, just like he had known all those years ago when I let him walk away. As I turned to leave, I whispered one last time, "I love you, Mogie." The jungle closed around me, but I felt no emptiness this time, because I knew, no matter where life took us, we would always be a part of each other. Some bonds are never broken, some love never fades, and sometimes even in the wildest places, we find our way back to the ones who were never meant to be forgotten. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell me, have you ever had a bond so deep it defied time and distance? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below.